Oh, man. All right. We're going to try this thing again. We had some recording issues, but we are here recording right now. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. I'm joined by Ro Hunter. Ro, how are you?
I am well. It's July 5th, Friday, and I'm feeling just ecstatic about what we're talking about today. So pumped up about it.
I don't think there could have been more perfect timing for a slight lag in your voice than me going, how are you? And you going, I'm well.
Rose shows up again.
The robot very quickly appearing on today's episode. That's right. We are recording this on July 5th. This episode won't go out until the next week, but we're getting it done right now. No more appropriate time to talk about college football than in July.
100% agree. There's not anything else going on. So
Nope, nothing. And definitely not any NBA free agency.
No.
And along with that, there's no more qualified human beings on the planet to talk about Vanderbilt football.
Dude, are you kidding me? Vandy #1. Look at my name. Are you? That's my logo is Vandy #1. I'm the biggest
Vandy
Commodore fan
ever. Biggest fan ever.
Biggest.
Yeah, so we want to go ahead and right off the bat apologize to any actual Vanderbilt fans who might be listening to this, because it's going to feel a little bit like we don't care about your team, maybe, or we don't care to. Maybe it won't feel like that. You know, maybe we care more than the average Vanderbilt fan does about their football program. I mean, you said before we recorded that the only thing that we're really confident about when it comes to Vanderbilt is they're good at baseball.
They are good at baseball. I watched them play baseball this last year. Really good baseball team.
You actually watched some baseball this past year on purpose?
Well, let me walk that statement back. I watched the scores pop up on my CBS app when I would check baseball scores to see how my team was doing and if it was worthy of a watch. And then I did watch them beat Mississippi State in baseball,
right.
So I guess that counts.
Which time?
Yeah.
Which time did you watch it happen?
The most recent.
Yeah, very good.
The most recent time, I guess. Yeah.
In the College World Series, they're the Alabama of college baseball. Not necessarily like just in terms of success, but also in terms of budget. Which goes a long way in a sport where you're the only team that has a full budget and no one else in the conference does. So turns out that's helpful. Who knew? But we're here to talk about Vanderbilt football. Real quick, Ro, when you think Vanderbilt football, especially in the past few seasons under Derek Mason, what do you think of them? What's your immediate gut reaction when you think about Vanderbilt?
Better than previous Vanderbilt teams I know of. So that's interesting. They lost their quarterback, though. They had that Kyle Shermer, and he was good.
Yeah, we'll talk about him a little bit. Do you think of Vanderbilt as being a team that's made it to a bowl game in 2 of the past 3 seasons? Because I don't.
No, of course not. Absolutely not. And when you look at Derek Mason's record, he's in his 6th year, and he still has a losing record. He's 24-38, approaching 2019. But they finished 3-5 last year in the SEC with a 6-7 record overall. That's pretty decent. I mean, I remember state years when I was in Mississippi State, and we would have 6-6 years, and it would be like, hey, we're here, we've arrived. So I feel like Vanderbilt should be proud of that because they don't really have I don't want to insult anybody, but you just look at their records and they just really have not been that great at football. Not in a very, very, very long time. In fact, maybe they were good at football when the Vanderbilts were still alive.
Wow, you dropped out for a while.
Oh, I did know.
No, yeah.
Dang it.
But it might have recorded. I'm looking at it right now, and it kind of looks like it might have actually recorded what you were saying. and then I just didn't hear it, but it's like uploading and all. That's pretty weird.
Damn,
Anyway.
dude. Maybe it's my internet or something. Let me boost it up here.
Sounds good.
Hang on.
Whenever you're ready, you can just kind of repeat.
Repeat back what I just said.
Yeah, you got a little bit into talking about Derek Mason's overall record and all of that, but then it kind of cut out right after you were like, what his overall record was.
Okay. Give that a second. Maybe it'll boost it a little bit. All right. Are you ready?
Yep.
Yeah, basically, Derek Mason, when you look at his overall record, he was 24-38, approaching into his, this will be his 7th year coming into the season. Mm-hmm. And last year they finished 3-5, 6-7 overall, and that's pretty good. I remember years when Mississippi State, my team and yours as well, finished in that category, and it was like, hey, we're on the way up, because when you look at Vanderbilt's overall record, just in terms of when they were good, it's been a long time ago. I think maybe they were really good back when the Vanderbilts were still alive and still having a lot of money, living in the Biltmore estate. So that was a long time ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it feels that way. You're talking about a team that, historically speaking, has been the absolute doormat of the conference.
Yeah.
From a football perspective, the jokes have always been that Vanderbilt's in the SEC in order to help the GPA of the conference in general, and not a whole lot else. Those sort of jokes. But I mean, you look at the recent history, and you don't. So it's tempting to think about Vanderbilt as just being a terrible, terrible program,
Yeah.
But we're looking at a team right now that has beaten archrival Tennessee 3 years in a row, has made it to 2 bowl games in the past 3 seasons, like we just said, is winning a handful of SEC games, and most importantly, is winning some, winning some non-conference games to be able to get bowl eligible.
It's unbelievable.
They're actually doing some things right to be an okay football program, which I think is huge. I don't mean that as a joke. Yeah. I mean that it's a huge thing. You are historically, and we can say this because of what you just said about Mississippi State was that way in the West.
100%.
For years and years and years. And it was like every now and then you might have 1 or 2 good seasons in one decade. But they had to learn how to win at least semi-consistently. And Vanderbilt's kind of on the verge of that, it kind of seems like. But
you would think.
You would think. Well, I guess we'll find out. Yeah. This season could go really far in telling us exactly where Vanderbilt is as a program. Off the top of your head, you mentioned they had 7 losses, one of those being a bowl game last year. But off the top of your head, could you guess how many of those games were blowouts?
Off the top of my head, I know not very many. Maybe 2 without me looking at it. I'm really not. Maybe 2 or 3, maybe. I'd say 2. I'd just say 2.
Yeah. No, you actually got it right. Got it. There are only 2 of them that were actual blowouts. So out of all the 7 losses, you're not even talking about a team that lost a whole lot of games really poorly. Here are their 7 losses. They lost by 5 points to number 8 at the time, Notre Dame.
Wow.
22-17. That's an eventual college football playoff team, Notre Dame. The 2 blowouts were South Carolina beat them by 23 points. And then number 2, Georgia, beat them by 28 points. But then after that, they only lost by 10 points to number 14, Florida, 7 points to number 14, Kentucky, 5 points at Missouri, and 7 points to Baylor in a bowl game.
Wow.
So that's 4 of them were 1-score losses, and 1 of them was a 10-point loss.
That's actually pretty remarkable. Looking at especially teams like Florida as well as Kentucky. Kentucky was really good last year.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. So I guess the Derek Mason coaching is actually working. I wonder why it's working though. What do you think?
I mean, it's working well enough for him to get a contract extension.
Yeah.
Which I think if you're a team like Vanderbilt and you've got a coach who's getting you into bowl games a few years in a row, or not in a row, but if, every other year you're making a bowl game and you're beating Tennessee a lot, and you've got an offense that's able to put up 17, 28, 38 points, like they were doing. That's a coach you got to hold on to and hope he keeps growing off of that. I think it really is the offense for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a weird team in my eyes, the way I look at it. I don't know why I said any of that like that.
It's perfect.
I don't even
know. Vanderbilt,
yeah.
That's how you have to talk about Vanderbilt, because everything they do is weird. I mean, what is a Commodore? Is that a bird of prey? Is it a man with a little funny hat? I don't know.
It's weird.
I
know, yeah. Not the Condor Commodores. Commodore Vanderbilt himself. They should bring his corpse out onto the sidelines as their mascot.
Oh my God! I've been watching Stranger Things, and that's very very in line with this new season. So.
Okay, well, no spoilers. I haven't seen
spoilers. No spoilers.
Or any of the show.
Oh, man, you gotta watch it.
I know. I've been. Yeah.
Anyways,
that's a little. I wasn't sure. Because I'm not a big horror fan, and I know it's not real horror; it's more suspense and all that. But I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get into the show, so I hadn't really worried about it. But I've been really curious about it recently, so I'm going to start it up very soon.
Ooh, man!
There you go.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I think you will.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but good stuff. So, when it comes down to Vanderbilt, it seems to be they were a weird team that for years did weird defensive things really well. They'd have a defense that just randomly led the nation in interceptions. You have a defense that randomly leads the nation in sacks. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they always had just an abysmal and embarrassing offense, and that's not the case right now. You mentioned Kyle Shermer last year, who's now gone, but they had a lot of offensive firepower, and that's been the difference maker with Vanderbilt. You talk about some of their other playmakers on offense, because in particular, I know you and I were talking before we hit record about one in particular, Keyshawn.
Yeah, Keyshawn seems to be have a huge year next year, just given they have a new quarterback coming in, and I think last year, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure he cracked the 1,200 mark. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, 1,200 yards.
Yep. 12 touchdowns?
And 12 touchdowns, that's right. And catching two touchdown passes. So he stands to have a huge year. I know they have a great senior tight end coming back, and I think, from what I understand about the Commodore offense, they do a lot with their tight end, and I think his name is Jared Pinkney. He sounds to be pretty good, a good target for this new quarterback. But I haven't seen too much on the new quarterback, but he's got big shoes to fill with the exit of Kyle. So we'll see, but I know that Keyshawn is going to be they're going to be counting on him to kind of recreate that 5 yards per carry. But the problem with that is going to be the O-line. They lost a few starters last year, so that might be a weakness.
Yeah, a few starters on an O-line that wasn't necessarily that great. Obviously, if you don't have a 1,200-yard rusher without having at least an okay offensive line.
Yeah.
Obviously, they do something right. It's not just Keyshawn Vaughn who does things well, but Keyshawn Vaughn himself actually really got better and better as the year went on, which is more on him and not necessarily on the line. I feel like, but they lose 3 offensive linemen. As mentioned, Kyle Shermer is gone. Kyle Shermer, along with, this is maybe the best skill position groups that Vanderbilt's seen in a long time, between Keyshawn Vaughn, between Jared Pinkney, and between a wide receiver, Khalija Lipscomb, who had like 900 receiving yards, I believe.
That's right.
He and Pinkney together combined for, almost 1,700 receiving yards and 16 touchdowns in just 2 players.
Yeah.
Which is huge. So
that is huge.
Yeah, that talent's coming back. The difference here is, as you said, it's really no hyperbole to say that this entire season most likely relies on who takes over for Kyle Shermer.
Yeah.
And as of now, it's looking like it's going to be Ball State grad transfer Riley Neal. 6'6" quarterback. Over his career at Ball State, threw for over 7,000 yards and 46 touchdowns on 60% completion percentage.
Man, when did you ever think that Vanderbilt was going to have this great an offense? Because they had guys like Jay Cutler back in the early 2000s, and even his numbers, I mean, they were pretty good, but those Vanderbilt teams that he was on were not good whatsoever. And then I mentioned him earlier before we recorded, Jordan Rogers, who was supposed to be this heir apparent, make things great at Vanderbilt, but he was okay at best. But it looks like Vanderbilt's offense next year is going to be pretty solid.
Yeah,
they got a lot of good pieces coming back.
They do, and when I was looking at the team in general and trying to keep up, look at like their recruiting class and everything, they seem to be doing something that I think that a lot of other SEC schools will not do this, because a lot of other SEC schools are trying to do, the classic, like, you recruit players because you really want 4-year players in order to really build consistent success.
Yeah.
And then maybe you get some JUCO guys to fill some gaps, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the common mentality. Vanderbilt has no problem bringing in transfers because they know they need quick fixes to keep things going. They're not going to be able to compete on a recruiting front with Alabama. They're not going to be able to compete in recruiting with Tennessee, you know? So I'm looking at it, and they, no joke, have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 transfers that came in this past year.
Wow, my goodness.
8 transfers, sorry, I miscounted. 6 of them with immediate eligibility, including the quarterback Riley Neal. So Vanderbilt, transfer you is what we're going to have to call them now.
I like it.
Yeah. Looking at it, what do you think would be, what do you think would be the expectations for Riley? Actually, you know what? Let me ask you this question, because behind Riley Neal, they have 2 rising juniors. One of them, by the name of Mo Hassan, played a little bit last year, just a few snaps, not much, because Shermer was really taking all of the responsibilities there. They have a rising junior whose name is, I kid you not, Deuce Wallace.
Deuce Wallace, man, I love that name.
Yeah. So I assume he's a Cowboy.
You're 100% accurate with that statement.
Yeah. The common thinking with Deuce Wallace is that he would have been the backup quarterback last year for Kyle Shermer, except he was suspended for like the whole year. Apparently. Or either that he was suspended and so they like redshirted him, but I believe he keeps that year of eligibility. But either way, so he's got experience in the system.
Yeah.
Do you think it'd be more worthwhile to go with someone who has experience in the system like Deuce Wallace, or go with like the guy who has playing experience, even though it's at a different school, like with Riley?
I'm going to give the most coach answer ever. The most SEC coach answer ever. And, Joseph, it's really about competition. It's about getting these guys in the same room, just pushing each other to see who's going to come up on top. Because at the end of the day, Joseph, this is a team game. And, as you can make your teammates better, you challenge them by beating them in and out of practice and just showing up and being professional every day as if you were getting paid.
Amen.
So we'll see what happens. Honestly, I think just looking at it on paper with the Ball State guy and the other senior returning who's familiar with the system, I think the offense is going to be terrific again. It's going to be explosive, just given the way Vanderbilt is utilizing their system. That they have the skill players, it seems like, in all those very core positions. That they've probably ever had in a long time, and as long as either of those quarterbacks, if the play is steady, then they'll be able to hang around with anyone. What do you think? That's my take on it, and I don't know how you pick an incoming quarterback who has a great experience and seems to have all the stats versus somebody who hasn't just been given a chance yet. Even though he's familiar with playbook and all that kind of stuff, that those are left for the guys who get paid all the money.
Actual
yeah, I don't know how you pick that. I guess you just pass the eye test and maybe which one looks better on Remember the Titans. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know how you pick. I guess maybe you go and spend a couple of decades working on becoming a coach and learning how to evaluate talent. And I haven't done that yet.
I'm still waiting on my shot at that. So we'll see. We'll see if anybody's out there listening would love to give that a shot.
It used to be you could just wait until NCAA football had come out for that year, the EA Sports NCAA football, and you could see what ratings the game gave all the players, and go, oh, you know what, the game thinks this guy's better. I gotta. No, I'm actually right there with you. I think it's important to note that I think the offense won't lose much.
Yeah.
I do think that they have enough of all they need is pretty good quarterback play. I think you're absolutely right there. All they need is like Riley Neal or Deuce Wallace, whoever it is that takes over. I would guess Neal, just based off of you don't often take on a graduate transfer. And obviously we'll have a lot to talk about with Mississippi State in a couple of weeks. Talking about you don't often take on a graduate transfer without planning on playing them, that type of thing. But he just seems to tick the boxes of what they would want for their offense. He's tall, plenty of experience, a pro-style quarterback that should complement Pinckney and Lipscomb well. Yeah, I mean, but they don't need him to be a superstar. They don't need him to be outstanding because they also have Keyshawn Vaughn as the fallback player as well. So feeling optimistic about Vanderbilt's offense. But then
well, I was going to transition to that. I was going to set you up for it because as much as we're saying that the offense is going to do its part, I think that the defense is going to be worse than it was last year, and they finished last in the SEC in defense. So, yikes.
Is that last in the SEC in scoring defense or like total yards or what? Exactly?
That is let me look it back up. I just had it pulled up.
I'm just curious about that because they finished
second worst.
60th.
Second worst. I misspoke. Worst. Sorry, Commodore fans. I misspoke. Second worst in overall defense. They allowed they were 0-5 when allowing more than 31 points in a game. But that kind of would make sense. Most teams would be 0-5 if you allowed 31 points.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much the modern game of football is an offensive game. If you're giving up 35 a game, that's going to be trouble.
That's a problem. But see, they just did not have a pass rush last year. No. And they have some good defensive pieces coming back. Like on linebacker, they have a good guy named Deo. I can't pronounce his last name. So I'm going to attempt here. Odiengbo. What a name. Deo Odiengbo. And he's good, but there just isn't anything on that D-line, which only had only two sacks only twice the whole year. That's not good.
No, it's just not good at all. They had let's see, they did make improvement. I was looking up a scouting report earlier to make sure I got this right. It was their first year with defensive coordinator Jason Tarver, and he brought them from allowing 31.3 points per game before he got there. Ouch. Down to 26.6. But even, I mean, while that's improvement, that still is, it's 60th in the country last year for points per game. One of the worst numbers in the conference by far in terms of points allowed per game and all of that. So it's a far cry from those Vanderbilt defenses, like before Derek Mason got there, especially like when James Franklin was there. Those Vanderbilt defenses that found like one weird specialty and did it well. The defense was just not good.
Yeah.
And then the defense also has lost some guys, especially some key secondary guys that were pretty good defensive standouts. They're now gone.
It looks like they lost their top 5 tacklers, which is a big deal. And on paper, when you look at the whole roster, their defense is just young. They got a lot of seniors and stuff on offense, but a lot of juniors, a lot of sophomores, a lot of freshmen on defense. Which does not bode well for, composure and actually being able to read what the offense is doing. Yeah.
If there is anything to be said, like a positive to be said about this, though, is that Mason himself has been, the quotes that he's been, or the quotes I've seen from him about the defense is he feels confident in the guys he's bringing in particular. While there are a lot of true freshmen, as you mentioned, there are a couple of like JUCO guys and grad transfers because that's what they've been doing. A lot at Vanderbilt. I'm pulling up that list again of transfers. They've got immediate eligibility from Derek Green, a 6'5", 290-pound defensive tackle from Oklahoma. Immediate eligibility from Cameron Watkins, a 6-foot cornerback from Illinois. Immediate eligibility from Eddie Zen Turner. That's a cool last name. Zen-Turner.
Zen Turner.
So Eddie Zen Turner, he transfers in from Marist College. So not a D1 program there, but he has immediate eligibility, another 300-pound defensive tackle. So they're adding more size, especially right there with some of these immediately eligible guys. And it's guys that I believe the quote was that Mason felt like they just weren't big enough on the front line. You mentioned the pass rush wasn't very good. You need a good pass rush or a good D-line in order to be able to, have a good secondary as well, because if you're able to put pressure on there and not making the secondary cover receivers for like 20 seconds. That sort of thing. So, I mean, Mason feels confident that they're bringing in some big guys, and bringing in finding some of the tools that they need. I don't know, as confident as I was saying I am in that their ability to do things right on offense. If this defense doesn't show any level of improvement at all, it puts so much more pressure on Riley Neal or whoever the quarterback is to be able to produce. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that.
Unless miraculously college football turns into Arena League football next year, man, I don't see them being able to keep up with these other teams that have like stout defenses. I mean, you're looking at their schedule, and last year it helped that they opened up the season with like Nevada and Middle Tennessee State, but this year no such luck because they go against the Wolfpack and the Blue Raiders, I think, at the beginning, and then they face like Georgia, Georgia, Purdue, LSU, and then Northern Illinois, and they'll probably beat Illinois, but Georgia, Purdue, and LSU, you're looking at a 1-4 start, and then you have South Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Where are they going to get wins with a defense like that? Could be wrong.
I mean, they're gonna have to hope, because that is a rough. I can't think of any rougher way to start your schedule by having to play not just a conference opponent, but the best conference opponent in your division
right out the gate.
In the conference, out the gate, you have Georgia right out the gate. At Vanderbilt Stadium. Still in, hot as can be, August 31st. That's going to be brutal. It just is. Yikes. So they have to hope and pray that they're able to get results against right there in the middle, because the bookend is rough. They open up rough. They got in the middle, Northern Illinois, Ole Miss, UNLV, and Missouri. They have to hope and pray that they can get some victories in there. Yeah, they barely beat Ole Miss last year. Yeah, they barely lost to Missouri last year, but that's still, you could be looking at, by the time they even reach their bye week in October 26th, maybe 2 wins.
Yeah. Like, yikes. And that,
that's before you go to South Carolina, before you go to Florida.
Exactly. Yeah.
Before you enter season at Tennessee.
And last year it helped. It helps when you have those kind of easier games in the beginning, like a Nevada and Middle Tennessee State, because you can kind of start building momentum and get that swag, as the kids say.
I do say that.
And you can sneak out a victory against Ole Miss. Speaking of which, just a side note here. Why Ole Miss usually produces pretty good football, except against one particular team, and that would be the Vanderbilt Commodores. They have found the Achilles heel to Ole Miss football. I can't tell you how many text messages I have saved to my phone for when my brother, who went to Ole Miss, he refuses to watch any Ole Miss versus Vandy games because Ole Miss has lost the last 3 years or so to Vanderbilt.
I think there might be a victory sprinkled in there in the past couple years.
I'd have to look it up too. But it's so funny.
At least one victory.
It's very interesting. Very, very interesting.
So weird. It makes no sense. I've often said it's one of the strangest things. It's one of the biggest anomalies in all of college football, much less the SEC. I can't think of a single other situation like it. I just can't. I've thought before, obviously, we pay closer attention being in the state of Mississippi to Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And, I've thought before, like, historically, Mississippi State had always played better against Alabama, worse against LSU. Ole Miss always played better against LSU, worse against Alabama. Historically, like in the early 2000s and the 90s, all of that. But that doesn't even compare, because this makes no sense at all. Because there's nothing to make – it's not like, oh, you get up for this big-time opponent, or, oh, you get up because this is a big divisional rivalry. No. This is your annual – you have to go to the other division and play this team every year. Do you call it a rivalry? I don't know. But it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's 90% of the time, it is a stupid close game.
It is. It's just weird.
Even if Vanderbilt's not somehow beating Ole Miss, it's most of the time it still is close, needlessly stressful. It makes no sense.
None whatsoever. And every time, Ole Miss is always the better team. Like, on paper, they're coming into that game with like wins. That doesn't make any sense.
I will say this, and I'm going to pull up the stats right now to try to, I guess, back myself up on this. To make sure I get this right. But I believe that team points allowed. I think that Ole Miss, the only thing about last year's Ole Miss actually had a worse scoring defense than Vanderbilt. I think that's right. Naturally, it's right when I need it is when I can't pull up.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, literally since 2004, it has been mostly Vanderbilt wins. It's since 2004, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, compared to Ole Miss's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Vandy in this decade is on the plus column against Ole Miss. Doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. Yeah, so I found it here. Yeah, oh gosh, I did not realize that Ole Miss was as bad of a scoring defense as they were. I know our compatriot on the podcast, Chandler Rowland, had mentioned to us several times that this was like a historically bad defense in Ole Miss football history. I didn't realize they were giving up 36.2 points a game.
Yeah.
I also didn't realize that UConn gave up 50 points a game. I don't know how you do that.
Jeez almighty.
Let's just totally go entirely off of our train of thought for just a brief moment, just to look at what did UConn do last
Did
year?
they even have a football game? Because I'm pretty sure that's a basketball team.
They don't have a home for their football team anymore. They left their conference.
They did, didn't they? Yeah.
Oh gosh, wow, this is so bad. They lost 56-17 to open it up against Central Florida. Let's see, the fewest amount of points I see they gave. Oh, how nice! They only gave up 22 points to UMass.
Oh.
They lost that game. So they lost 56-17 to UCF, 62-7 to Boise State. They barely beat Rhode Island 56-49 for their only victory on the year. Lost to Syracuse 51-21, lost to Cincinnati 49-7, lost to Memphis 55-14, lost to South Florida 38-30.
They got it together for that one.
It's a barn burner.
What up?
Yep. Lost to UMass 22-17, lost to Tulsa 49-19, lost to SMU 62-50.
Gunslingers coming out, dude.
Lost East Carolina 55-21 and lost to Temple 57-7. That is the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life. They gave up 50 points.
Sheesh.
Wow. Sheesh. So anyway, all right. All that to say, let's get back to Vanderbilt. Let's wrap things up with them. They've got such a weird history with Ole Miss. They've got a weird history in the last several years with Tennessee, actually beating them 3 times in a row. But this schedule is looking rough. And I think that's going to be probably too much. If Vanderbilt made it to a bowl, 2 times in the last 3 years? I believe they made it 3 years ago, missed out 2 years ago, made it last year. I think they're going to continue that alternating thing. I just don't see them winning enough to be bowl eligible this season.
No.
This schedule is just going to be too rough on them, and this schedule does not have enough of a good flow to it for them to get any sort of momentum.
I totally agree. I only see really about 5 wins. I don't, and even that I'm kind of stretching it, but I don't think they're going bowling this year, just given the way the schedule's going out and how there's so many holes on defense. And the SEC, you do have to play defense. That still is a thing. You kind of have to do week in, week out, and with a bunch of freshmen and sophomores and juniors, I don't see that happening unless there's a massive clunker along the way by somebody like a South Carolina or a Kentucky or even a Tennessee. I don't.
Right. I mean, there's always a chance Kentucky falls apart after their one really good year.
That is true, and I think no more Benny Snell for Kentucky. So,
all right. So here's the most important question, though. Let's just say Vanderbilt has a rough year. I do think I could see maybe 4 victories in this whole thing.
Yeah.
But does Vanderbilt beat Tennessee?
Oh man, because it's in Knoxville, I'm gonna say no, even though that hasn't determined anything. I just have this funny feeling that Tennessee is man, because how many the Vanderbilt beat Tennessee last year, and the year before that.
3 years in a row.
And so this would be the 4th coming up. Man, something about that just does not feel right. So I'm going to say Tennessee just based on a feeling. I could be totally wrong about this, but just based on a feeling, I think Tennessee's going to win. If they don't, Philip Fulmer will turn over in his grave, and he's not even dead yet. So
he'll find a way to die.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to hold out hope. I'm not sure I see enough in Tennessee quite yet to feel super confident in them, outside of the fact that they've had good recruiting classes. But I don't know if they're going to be veteran experienced enough to not lose for a 4th year in a row.
God.
I know. I'm holding out hope for Vanderbilt because I'm rooting for them in that regard, but I'm with you. I think that Tennessee takes it this year. But I bet it's going
to
be
look. That is. Can you imagine? Let's see. In 2015, you enrolled at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville as a freshman. And this was your college football team experience, year in, year out, losing to Vanderbilt 3, possibly 4 years in a row. Like,
oh my
like
gosh.
I know. When I was in college, we had some pretty big clunkers like that were not good. The infamous 3-2 game against Auburn, state against Auburn, and many like that. But I don't think while we were there we lost to our rival. We had Derek Pegues running back that punt return.
I don't know if I've ever been in a more electrified stadium than
that. Wasn't that amazing? It was so good. Point is, we did not just abysmally get defeated all the time. It was painful football to watch at times with Michael Hennig slinging the football, breaking records of interceptions. But overall, I just can't imagine that being a freshman at the University of Tennessee and then having to live through that and then be a fan the rest of your life. I imagine there's a lot of sad seniors just really trying to get it together this year.
Right. Like, this has got to be it, guys. This has got to be it. And how many years in a row has Tennessee been saying that? You know?
Since they got rid of Lane Kiffin, or rather, since Lane Kiffin got rid of them.
Got rid of himself. Yeah. If I had to make like a firm prediction, which I try not to do because I'm so bad at it, but if I had to make a firm prediction, I think Vanderbilt slides back down to last place in the East, but still beats Tennessee.
Golly, that would be just
that's what I would want.
Poetic justice, truly.
It just would. It just would. All right, well, that's going to wrap up our Vanderbilt preview. Again, apologies to any Vanderbilt fans out there that listen to this and just go, oh, my gosh, did these guys do
they research? Even know football?
Yeah. The fact of the matter is, it's fun to look at a team like Vanderbilt that you make these assumptions about and then look at them and go, oh, like most of these are based off of Vanderbilt of 10 years ago and not the Vanderbilt of right now, who has actually been an okay team, been an okay program, been kind of making some right moves. So I think that's pretty cool. And I'm going to continue rooting for Vanderbilt in that regard to keep doing what they are doing. And I'm all about it. Go
Comms. Go Commies. I don't think anybody calls them that.
I hope not. Oh, man. Before we bounce out, Ro, where does Kawhi Leonard play this next year?
I'm going to say Toronto. I think he's staying. What about you?
I think he's staying, but I think it would be the most Kawhi Leonard thing possible to get so mad at to let the Laker hype continue to build and be like so mad that like everyone's pushing him to do that he goes to the Clippers and makes it his life mission to ruin the Lakers every chance he gets.
Dude.
And I'd be all about that. Oh my
gosh. Yes. Yes.
All right, let's go wrap things up here on Running Up the Clock. That's Ro. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Stay tuned. We got more previews coming out real soon. I forget what exactly is on the docket for next up. Maybe Auburn? I think that's right.
I feel like you're right about that. Why not?
Yeah. You know what? It is. I just looked at the schedule. It will be Auburn football. We'll have a special guest in the ROTC studios for that one. Our friend Jim Strickland, Auburn superfan and Twitch streamer extraordinaire, Jimmer, going to join us on the old show for that Auburn.
And
so stay tuned.
Yeah, go Auburn. Go Commies.
I'm just going to mercifully kill the recording. See you guys.